Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the Why Teacher. Today I'm so excited to share with you an activity which really helped develop my students as self-aware writers and at the same time made them analytical and informed readers. So here goes. The primary idea of the activity was to help my children see themselves as writers. But in the process, I realized that, the children and the class interacting with these stories was also developing in them a certain sense of curiosity and attention for detail, which really helped them with their comprehension and inferencing skills. So, this particular activity, which was titled Meet the Author, was addressing my children's reading, writing, speaking, listening, and thinking skills all at the same time. So, to begin the activity, I would be following the writing genre for the week, and the writing would get done as usual. The children would be either writing a narrative, a short story, an autobiography, a biography, or whatever the plan would be for the week. And once the writing was done, I would, of course, take my time to read through the stories, to check the stories, and then finally select, the top two stories that I felt, would be a good sample or would be a good representation of the child's skills to showcase to the rest of the classroom. So, to clarify, this kind of an activity would happen at the end of the month. So, it is not something that you can do on a weekly basis because writing takes time. You want to give children the time to write their narratives, to write their stories. The teacher takes time to read these stories, then the selection process happens. And of course, you need to schedule in time to send the selected pieces to the rest of the classroom to be able to read them through. So you might want to give them an assignment or a homework where they have to read their peers' stories and come prepared for the session. A little piece of advice would be like if you're starting or initiating this activity in your classroom, you do want to give children a little bit of guidance on the kind of questions they want to prepare or how to look at the story. So you can definitely set your purpose for the whole activity yourself. You could do it along with your children. So, in my case, I wanted children to identify different parts of the story. I wanted them to know that every author has a purpose for writing. Each author would have their own style of writing. So, you would want to distinguish one from the other and what makes their writing unique. So, I would push the children to start looking for word choice. I would ask them to try to understand the characters that have been created, if there's any kind of observations on the events that are happening in the story or a certain point of view that's being presented. I would encourage my children to formulate their questions around it. So in the beginning, you would have to give them a little bit of guidance on, what to look for in the story, because a lot of times the session might get wasted in, irrelevant questions or generic questions. So teaching your children what to look for is important in the beginning, and eventually you will see that once the activity becomes regular, your children already know or have an analytical mind to look at the story. It is equally important to train your children to be respectful and mindful when it comes to critiquing a peer's story. So for the writers that you select, you need to have a separate dialogue with them, discussing with them how their writing inspired you as a teacher, and why you think that this writing needs to be showcased to the rest of the classroom. The children have to be comfortable with the idea, and of course you have to give them this reassurance that their work is being showcased because it deserves applause, it deserves to be critiqued. And always keeping in mind that the feedback can be positive, some parts will be negative, and then training your children to always come up with two positives and, like you say, two stars and a wish. So keeping that kind of an attitude where you would be expecting a certain kind of negative criticism as well, and how to take it. So there's a lot involved in the process for you as a teacher as well. So you play the moderator through this session, and you have to ensure that the positivity and the respect remains. Prepping up for this activity is a lot of fun, so I think you can engage a certain artist in your classroom along with the writer to create kind of a book cover that can go in the background as a part of your presentation. And then of course the teacher should begin by giving a credible introduction to the writer, appreciating and acknowledging the writing skills, and bringing to light what are the reasons why this story has been selected, so that you begin on a note where it already establishes that this writer is credible, has a lot of talent, and now can be questioned about how and why they came about the story or the story draft. So once the introduction is done, you give the writer a little bit of time to talk about their journey of writing the story and share with them their challenges, and then, of course, open the floor for question and answers. I'm sure that when you're going to do this activity, you're going to realize just how heartwarming it is to watch children validate each other's work and validate each other's questions. So the most amazing part for me in this story, in this Meet the Author activity, really was the fact that children had really read the stories analytically, they had relevant questions, and the whole idea of the child who is sitting on that chair, who is justifying, their story title, their story characters, their story plot, is actually at that very moment understanding their own story writing process as well. This, for me, was the most important part, because the children, when they sat there as writers, really started to understand their own story process. So I think that this entire activity opened up the children's eyes to their very own style of writing. And so when other children pointed out certain specifics about the writing, or certain nitty-gritty details that they probably weren't even aware of, they became aware of that. And so, like I said, this entire process left them much more informed about their writing. And for the children who were asking the questions, this was something that developed respect for their peer, or for this person who had put in so much effort in writing. And you could sense that in that very session, you could already see eyes and hearts that were like desiring to be the next author, so that they would get that important feel of being asked questions about their story and being that person who had created that masterpiece. How you end the activity is as important. So the teacher must give thanks to the writer for allowing their story to be showcased. She must thank the children for being respectful. And in the end, you have to ensure that the session ends on a positive and hopeful note, leaving the writer reassured, making the children feel, proud of their contributions to an intelligent discussion for the day. And all in all, this is a very insightful activity that is going to make your children more informed, self-aware, and analytical in their approach towards reading and writing. Well, I hope that today's episode inspires you to try something new in your classrooms. Do send me your feedback, and until next time, Allah Hafiz.